Hi, welcome back to this training course on how to develop and implement a fundraising strategy for marine protected areas. I'm Pilar Balbuena and I'll be presenting the Module 4 of this training, Definition of a Fundraising Communications Strategy. A communication strategy consists of the following elements, which will be presented in this video tutorial. SWOT analysis, and then the communication strategy canvas, goals and objectives, target audience with types of donors and segmentation of target audiences, key messages, communication methods and tools, work plan and tactics, budget, and monitoring and evaluation. Using the information from the SWOT analysis, that will be the introduction in our communication strategy, we follow up with the different elements of the strategy. This is the format we are going to use in our practical exercise. All the necessary elements will be explained in the next slides. But even before that, we need to ask ourselves a few questions that will help us build the communication strategy. Is there a team in our organization dedicated to communications? What capabilities do they have? Consider staff, time, and budget. What is the procedure for obtaining approval for a public-facing communication effort? Who is your point of contact? How do your goals, timelines, and resources align with those of the communication team? How do they differ? What concrete steps can you take to improve your understanding of your institution's communication and build a long-term partnership? In 2 weeks? In 1 month? In 3 months? What additional assistance do you need to reach your organization's communication and policy goals? SWOT analysis is a strategic planning tool used to evaluate the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats involved in any particular situation. It starts with your objectives and identifies the internal and external factors that are favorable or unfavorable to achieve the objective. SWOT analysis is a tool that can help you to analyze what your project does best now in communications and to devise a successful strategy for the future. SWOT can also uncover areas of the project that are holding you back. A SWOT analysis examines both internal and external factors. That's it, what's going on the inside and outside of a project. So some of these factors will be within your control and some will not. In either case, the wisest action you can take in response will become clearer once you have discovered, recorded, and analyzed as many factors as you can. Internal strengths, characteristics of the project that give it an advantage over others. External, it's a weakness, characteristics that place the project in a disadvantage relative to others. External opportunities, elements in the environment that the project could exploit to its advantage. And other external threats, elements in the environment that could cause trouble for the project. Before planning any communication activity, we need to analyze what we are already doing and what works and what not. We begin with the objectives of the strategy, the first step, what we want to achieve. To achieve impact, communications work needs to be both strategic and high quality. Having a clear understanding of your objectives is a prerequisite for developing an effective strategy. What are you trying to do? What has been done in the past? Did it work? What are you trying to do now? Objectives must be clear and focused, specific and realistic. Link your objectives to MPA priorities and results so that everything that follows in the communication strategy supports the MPA's main objectives. Common goals for a fundraising communication plan include raising a set amount of money, expanding donor base, donors loyalty management, increasing the average of gift size, for example. Depending on your fundraising communication goals, your plan, your outreach methods, write relevant scripts, and assign targets to the team. The next step is defining who we want to communicate with and the possible partners who can help us in this project. To communicate effectively and achieve the end goals, it's vital to identify your target audience. Who are your key stakeholders? This is where it's important to identify internal and external audiences. Break up your target audiences into primary and secondary categories. The more specific and focused your target audience is, the more effective and targeted your communication will be. Primary target audience. This group includes the key groups, persons, or stakeholders that you want to receive the most information. Secondary target audience. This group includes those individuals who will benefit from the messages from your organization but have less of a vested interest in the information. A best practice is to collect data on two or more fundraisers on similar nature, for example, similar causes or duration. And you need to understand what kind of donors, major donors, small donors, corporations, government funds, etc., contributed significantly. Some types of donors, of target audience we are defining. In order to define this, you need to make some questions. What audience do you consider as primary target? Communication methods to be applied? What needs to be communicated? Who does it need to be communicated to? How should it be communicated? Who needs to communicate it? What is the intended result of the communication? So essentially, audience segmentation is a technique of using data about your target audience to organize them into different groups based on similarities. Once you have divided your audience into these groups or segments, you can create more tailored messages for each group. You can also develop different marketing strategies and tactics based on what will be the most effective for different groups. Segmenting your target audience allows you to deploy a ton of different marketing and retention strategies that grow and strengthen your user base. With audience segmentation, you can clearly define your target audience and then create messaging that resonates specifically with them without alienating anybody else. Audience segmentation prevents mediocrity because it makes your communication strategies more personalized or targeted. It allows you to define your target audiences, adapt your message so that it reaches them specifically, incorporates a specific need that you can help you increase conversion rates, create a relationship with your target audience and earn their loyalty, and get leads to speed up your communication cycle. You need to segment them into different contact lists so you can personalize communication, the messaging, and nurturing plans appropriately for each. You need to be clear about who you need to target and make your approach relevant to their agenda. Choose people of organizations with influence who can change things, who can multiply your message, people who make decisions. Understand the key ground for which they draw their beliefs, goals, their facts, and their logic. You need to consider what benefits they might get from agreeing with us and doing what we want. Why it's important to them. So you need to decide what works best for you and which channels to avoid to reduce costs. Some questions to consider can be how early before the fundraising start date did you begin communication with donors? Do you need to start earlier this time? How did responses and donations change through the communication campaign? You can use that as a brief to evolve messaging throughout the current campaign. Each of the types brings unique value to your project. You thus pick and choose from the donors investors who best suit your current targets. For instance, if your communication plan relies heavily on social engagement, the micro-influencer will be a better fit than an altruistic donor investor who doesn't want any recognition. Similarly, a communitarian will be an excellent choice for peer-to-peer fundraising. The messaging, too, changes from one donor investor type to another. Once you establish contact with them, you can further personalize communication based on the data you collected and nurture them to give. Segment current donors investors by their interests, previous communication, donation history, and other factors to personalize messaging. The next step are the key messages. What are our key messages? What do we want our target audience to know? Key messages clarify meaning and provide the takeaway headline of the issue you want to communicate. Key messages are important because they serve as the foundation of an organization's branding and marketing efforts and should be reflected in all written and spoken communications. Key messages are the foundation of your communication strategy and should be used in all communication activities. They are not timelines. Key messages aren't appropriate to be memorized and repeated word for word, but should be used as guidelines so they can be included naturally into conversations. Knowing how to create compelling and key messages will enable your communication to have more impact. Effective key messages are concise. Focus on 3 to 5 messages per topic. Write 1 to 3 sentences for each message. Should be read or spoken in 30 seconds or less. Strategic. Define, differentiate, and address benefits. Relevant. Balance what you need to communicate with what your audience needs to know. Compelling. Design meaningful information to stimulate action. Simple. Use easy to understand language. Avoid jargon and acronyms. Memorable. Ensure that messages are easy to recall and repeat. Avoid long run-on sentences. Real. Use active voice, not passive. Don't use advertising slogans. Tailor. Communicate effectively with different target audiences by adapting language and depth of information. Now, how are we going to take these key messages to your target audience? What activities, channels, tools? Once you have identified your key messages, you need to determine the vehicle for delivering your message. Keep in mind that you may choose different mechanisms to meet different stakeholder needs. The reach and impact of your message will increase if the same message is distributed several times via multiple methods. Keep in mind you may have different communication goals and therefore may need to use different communication tools for different groups of people. In assessing your total communication strategy, ask yourself, what resources are readily available to me to communicate my message? Once you have identified your needs and resources, review potential constraints you may face and develop strategies for overcoming these challenges. Start by addressing these aspects on the communication channels that you are considering. Reach, how many? Who uses it? Are they all the right people? Context, how is it consumed? Moment, when does it reach them? You can see in this slide some examples of channels that can be used. You need to choose the ones that can help you to achieve your goals and target audience. You don't need to use them all. Look for the ones where your target audience is. This is where you outline the complete details of relevant communication activities in a project plan, complete with deadlines and assigned responsibilities. You can include items such as milestones and review dates to help yourself or the team on track. A work plan can also include a brief outline of forecasted costs and identification of the communication lead. It's important that they're regularly reviewed and updated so that the team stays focused and on track to meet objectives. So, how much money and time do we want or need to spend? The budget is useful in outlining where resources will be allocated. You need to work with the resources you have and prioritize the activities that will directly affect your goals. You don't need to spend money, but be aware that you may have to spend time. A communication budget provides a formal process of planning, tracking, and measuring the impact of your expenditures. time and money on communication activities. The budget sets out the time and funding required to meet your communication objectives and provides a method of managing the expenditure over a budget year. Your strategy establishes how you will achieve your marketing objectives. Communication strategy describes the techniques you will use to deliver key messages to the target audience. The objective of the communication budget is to achieve the communication goals as cost-effectively as possible and demonstrate a successful return on investment. The budget also sets out the time scales for expenditure over the year. Budgets enable you to track planned expenditure against actual cost. Use the budget to measure how well the program achieved communication objectives. Then, what we want to get for our communication strategy? What indicators will show we have been successful? Some thoughts to begin with to monitor and evaluate your communication strategy. Keep it simple. Communication monitoring and evaluation does not have to be complicated. Only seek to measure what can be measured and be realistic about how much can be tracked given your resources and time. Don't just focus on website statistics. Think more broadly about monitoring and evaluation to include quality and usefulness and uptake and use of your outputs, even if you only pick a few indicators. Always link back to your objectives. Be clear about the questions you are asking, why and how you plan to answer them. Then select the indicators that are most relevant. Feed into wider efforts to measure outcomes and impacts. Communication monitoring and evaluation can assess overall project or program impact, but it should be seen as an integral part of that process, not separate. And then, after monitoring and evaluation, we have to apply your lessons learned again and again. I have used this canvas as a reference through the presentation. It's now up to you to fill it in with information from your MPA. We will use your filling canvas for a practical exercise when we meet face-to-face. I need you to gather the information, fill in all the blanks, and have your canvas ready when we meet in person. I therefore invite you to download the canvas, which you will find on the training page on medpan.org. You have to analyze your MPA. What are your objectives, target audience, key messages, and take note of all of this. Following this video tutorial, we ask you to complete the assessment for Module 4, which you will find on medpan.org. This short test will allow you to check your understanding on the topics covered in this module. Also, note that you will find all the resources mentioned in this tutorial, as well as additional useful resources in the training manual. Thank you for your attention, and see you soon.